Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsey, a psychologist in Silicon Valley, and I am the host of Super Psyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. Super Psyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't. Last September, I read a brilliant piece in Time magazine by an inspired high school sophomore. The title was, "It's Time for Boys to Talk About Emotional Health." I read it with my teenage sons, and it resonated deeply. It certainly makes sense that the article hit, because while children can take instruction and feedback from grown-ups, research suggests that there are instances when they listen more deeply to the voices of their peers. In over 100 episodes of Super Psyched, all of my guests have been adults. I decided it was time to change that when I invited the brilliant author of that article, 16-year-old Zach Gottlieb, to join me. As you'll hear, Zach took action to assist his peers with his phone. He created a flourishing Instagram community and a website, both called Talk with Zach. Through these efforts, Zach is actively helping teens engage other teens and talk about real things, taking the stigma out of mental health and providing relief by sharing various useful resources to teenagers who feel overwhelmed. I seriously wish Zach and Talk with Zach was around when I was in high school. So listen in as Zach and I talk about what is happening today with teens and ways we can all help out. Zach Gottlieb, welcome to Super Psyched.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm just so happy to be with you, man, because I have been a fan of your work for nearly a year now. When I came across your article that appeared in Time, and I believe my son even reached out to you, just give you props for all of your good work. And it's incredibly inspiring that you're doing what you're doing, that you're putting yourself out there. You are actually living the idea that you propose, and that is that vulnerability is strength by putting yourself out there. And I'm wondering, what has it been like to be so out there as a 16-year-old?
When I started this, I was really scared about this. I was super nervous with my first post, with the first few posts actually. And I had no idea how people would react. But I was really surprised because not only like my friends, but people like teens from all over the world were like reaching out and saying how much this has helped them. And I honestly, when that happened, I wasn't that surprised because I was like, a lot of people are dealing with this. And when they see this, they're going to be so thankful that this is starting to change and that there's someone out there that is experiencing the same things as them.
So let's go to the genesis of the Instagram community as well as talkwithzach.org. Sure. What was your reason for creating it? What was the fuel that caused you to put all of that energy into this huge undertaking?
In the media, teens were encouraged to speak up about their mental health. And the Surgeon General later on declared a teen mental health crisis. And just teen mental health was all over the news. And I sort of looked around and I was like, wait, we can't talk about this. I've never talked about my mental health with my friends. I've never heard anyone talk about it with me. It just was sort of this taboo topic that everyone avoided. And I was like, this has to change. Because I know there are people that are out there feeling alone and they just feel like they're the only ones going through something. And I wanted to sort of create a space where we could have these important conversations. And then I also wanted to model what it looks like to be vulnerable. Because I feel like if I'm not doing it, then other people won't be able to take my lead. And I feel like the only way to really change the culture is to get more and more people to like speak up. And I've actually seen a lot of positive change. And I'm really happy about that. Like some of my friends have started doing it, which I think is really great. Totally unrelated to me too, which is really interesting. Like it hasn't been me like encouraging them or anything. It's just like they've started, I guess, noticing that this is changing, which I think is really powerful. And also some like influencers and public figures have also started to emphasize mental health. And I just think this is a great first step in opening up these conversations.
What's amazing to me, Zach, is that you are such an outlier in terms of being an upstander instead of being a bystander. You decided to be the change that you wanted to see. And that was what seems to have fueled you to take on this massive project when so many people are, just getting into video games and other things, and not to bash those, and I'm sure you enjoy those as well. You are investing your time, a lot of time, into this. And again, just to reiterate, putting yourself on the line and being the face. And we know that you can either receive applause or tomatoes or both. Can you describe what have been some of the surprises that you've encountered in actually releasing Talk with Zach?
I mean, I guess the surprise is just how many people have caught on to this. I thought that a lot more people would be getting down on this and sort of making fun of this or maybe publicly shaming it. Mm-hmm. But I've been surprised. Like, I've only had, I think, 1 or 2 encounters with someone making a mean comment or DMing me something bad. But yeah, it's been really positive. And I think something that I guess I didn't know was like the response I'd get. And I think it's really amazing to see that people actually care about making this change. And I'm really glad that I can be a part of it.
As I listen to you, Zach, I'm tripping on one thing, and that is that we humans are infused with what's called a negativity bias. You may know what this is, that it takes 10 positives to kind of, well, the golden ratio is 5-1, but oftentimes there could be 10 things that happen that are positive and 1 that's negative, and we trip on the negative 1 thing rather than notice the 10 positive things. And it sounds like you haven't really been tripping on the 3 negative things, that you're really able to take in the positive as the net effect. Yeah, you're nodding.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like with anything you do that's, especially like this, that's so public and that's taking a position that's not like an unbiased thing, like I'm clear that we need to have these conversations and that we should be vulnerable. So I feel like, of course, there's going to be some form of pushback. And even though it's very, very small, I don't ever really think about it. It doesn't affect me at all. I just feel like it's expected. Even if I was getting a little like more, I wouldn't let it get me down, because I know that there are a lot of positive, and whatever I do, whatever anyone does, there will always be people who say no. That's just how the world works. There's nothing you can do about it.
It's interesting. I was in sales for a period during my career, and there was a very high attrition rate, meaning that many people couldn't take the sales thing, especially because of the no's. And it sounds like you have basically determined that no is going to be a part of the equation no matter what, and that you're willing to endure the cost of the no's to get to the bigger prizes for everyone. And you're definitely nodding. And I find myself also thinking about Zach Sleep, somebody who I interviewed on this podcast, another Zach who loves playing basketball. And he is a 5th grade teacher. And he said, if you want to be really educated, surround yourself with children. They will teach you more than you could possibly imagine. I'm wondering, what have you learned from the people who've been participating in your online community?
That's a really interesting take. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, because I feel like younger people, even though we might not have lived as long, we know so much because our experiences are unique and they're different than like someone who's maybe older. And I think that a lot of things that I've learned are just like other perspectives, like other teen perspectives that I wasn't aware of, other situations, other things people are dealing with, and the very level of severity of those, of what they're going through.
Yeah. So it's interesting because ostensibly you're providing the framework for your community of youths. And you're also aware that your fellow teenagers and younger, perhaps, have unique impressions and no less valid than adults who've had more trips around the sun. In some ways, their impressions are maybe even more valid because they haven't kind of erased the purity of their experiences. And I'm thinking about my own experience. You should appreciate this. I think I was a camp counselor when I was 18.
Oh, wow.
And I loved being a camp counselor. It was the best job ever, particularly because it wasn't so long ago at that time that I was a kid, and I remembered what the good counselors did, and I remembered what the bad counselors did, and I was able to use that data to be what I thought was a really good counselor. And I think I did a good job. And I wish that I could have had an iPhone back then to just give myself some memos about parenting, an 18-year-old's view of parenting that I have forgotten after these many trips around the sun between my 18th birthday and becoming a parent. What are some of the things that parents, from your vantage point, and adults really need to understand about teens that maybe they've forgotten since they've kind of had more trips around the sun?
Yeah, I think one of the main things that comes to mind is just autonomy. I feel like so many parents want to be involved with everything their teens do. They just want to get involved. They want to sort of almost live vicariously through their kids and just be there every step of the way. And I think that while some support is really important, if you're doing it all the time with no letting up and your teens are having no free time and no time to themselves and everything they do is related to their parents, when they get to college, they're not going to know what to do. When they go out in the world, they're going to be lost. And right now, they're not going to sort of develop into themselves. And I think when parents do this, it's so limiting. It's like chaining their kids down almost. And like, I'm not saying don't help your kids at all. I think guiding your kids is important, but there's a difference between guiding and like literally like spoon feeding your kids, writing their essays, doing everything for them. And like, yeah, I just think that's something that parents sort of need to be aware of, especially in this day and age where parents are more involved than ever.
It sounds like the parents from where you sit have good intent, but the impact is really negative.
Yes, exactly. Obviously, they have the best intent in mind, which is they want to help their kids. But what they don't realize is that sometimes taking a step back can be the most helpful.
Switch over back to your Instagram community and website. You've come up with probably one of the best slogans I have ever heard of. And it is, for the listeners, we can't change what we don't talk about. Oh my God, you completely crushed it. You used your language perfectly. You couldn't have come up with better words from where I sit. How did you choose that slogan?
I just thought about the core principles of what Talk with Zach is. And ultimately, what it's promoting is speaking up and action. And that's how we make change. If we're vulnerable, we promote others to be vulnerable. If we talk about an issue, we raise awareness, we create change in our communities. And I feel like my slogan is just that. It's just, if we talk about something, if we promote it, if we speak up about it, if something's not right that we see, we be an upstander, then that's how change happens. That's how we get things to be different.
One of the things that upstanders seem to have in common is empathy. And I can tell that you're a very empathic young man. I would love to know, what do you think contributes to growing a person's ability to be empathic?
I think just imagining a situation that's not your own. Instead of imagining the world through, for me, it would be Zach's shoes. It would be imagining the world through someone else's shoes. And just putting yourself in someone else's place, forgetting everything you know about yourself, and then looking at another perspective, another lifestyle, another sort of world in itself. And then the next step, of course, is relating that back to your perception and like going back to yourself. Or at least that's how I do it. I'm sure there are other ways to become more empathic, but that's just like how I look at that.
And I have a feeling that you and your mom, who is in the mental health field, have conversations that help cultivate your empathy even further. And you were even describing to me, if it's okay that I share this, that you and I are both fans of The Office, the great TV series. The American version is the one we talked about.
Yeah.
And how you could watch somebody like a Michael Scott, objectively an oaf. I mean, a complete buffoon. And you could be absolutely angry with him and empathic with him the next second. Can you describe how maybe watching a show like The Office or having really good conversations with someone like your mom might help cultivate empathy?
I feel like knowing that there's always something more to a person is really important. Like if you look at The Office, you're like, this Michael character, like you hate him. You just hate him the first episode. And then as you keep watching, you realize all these things about him. Like, he's sort of alone. He wants love. He wants the same things that we all do. And then once you realize that, you're like, I actually want the best for this guy. Even though he could do all these things, he could be racist and sexist and just be an asshole. Sorry.
Totally. You're allowed to say asshole.
Just, yeah, to everyone. But you just realize that he has good intentions despite what he does. And that's just like another layer of complexity. And that's just really good perspective to have.
That's an amazing perspective. It's funny how when I was growing up, the great song, We Don't Talk About Bruno, that just thankfully won an award from Encanto. What a great movie. We didn't talk about mental health when I was growing up. No one talked about it. I mean, absolutely not. And I'm going to say straight up, I was seeing a therapist growing up. It's part of the reason that I became one myself. And it sounds like you're really trying to just take all of the stigma out of talking about an integral part of our health, in as much as we might have no problem going to school on crutches because we had a broken leg. Talking about mental health is something that you're really working hard to destigmatize.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like people have always viewed like a broken leg different from like a major mental breakdown or anxiety attack. But I think there are many parallels between them. And I think that as people start to realize that mental health should be taken seriously, there's just going to be less like pushback. And the other thing that I want to like mention is if you like fall and hurt your wrist or mess up your wrist or whatever, you're going to see a doctor. But if you have a terrible mental incident, I think a lot of people wouldn't see a therapist. I actually know that for a fact. And I think that's so interesting how different we view those, how we view physical health versus how we view mental health. I actually think this is starting to change, which is great in the past few years. But I think we need to continue and make it known that mental health should be treated very similar to physical health.
I think you're spot on. Health is health. Mental, physical, it's health. And I couldn't agree more. I'm wondering, what are some of the barriers to initiating therapy as you see it, particularly as it relates to teens?
In terms of initiating therapy, I feel like because mental health is so stigmatized, I feel like a lot of teens are like, if I say I'm seeing a therapist, what will my friends think? What will my family think? What will other people think of me? Will they think of me differently, negatively? Will they think something's wrong with me? There are a million thoughts that can run through their mind, and that just deters them from going in and getting help. Whereas if going back to the physical thing, you hurt your wrist, it's like, oh, you see like that's just the normal thing.
Such a great point. And, you know, last night, this is a little bit on the nose. My son and I, my 13-year-old, and I watched Shawshank Redemption. I'm not sure if you've ever seen that movie. I hope you have, but no, there is a scene in which the only way out is through actually comes to life in a big way. You'll have to see it. But if you ever wondered whether or not courage and vulnerability are on the same coin, it's such a good movie. There's a reason why it's number one on IMDb with a 9.3 average. I mean, it's just a perfect film. It talks a lot about things that you care about as well. Toxic masculinity really makes a big appearance in that movie because it's on a prison camp. But I'm wondering, I know that you care a lot about toxic masculinity. I wonder if you could speak a little bit about what that is from your vantage point and possibly what might actually assist in alleviating toxic masculinity systemically.
Traditionally, men are very stoic and women can talk about their emotions a little more. And there's so much in our culture, there's things like, oh, men don't cry, or like men just aren't portrayed ever in the media of really talking about what they feel. And I feel like it's not only men, but like I feel like women too traditionally can sometimes be a little uncomfortable with it. And same with men, just like having men speak up about their mental health. So I feel like one way to alleviate it is just to make it normal. And just like mental health, this is starting to happen more and more. And the more men that speak up, and I'm trying to do that, I think many more people are also doing it and making a big impact in their communities as well. And as more and more people start opening up these conversations, the more normal it'll feel. And I just want to bring in like a personal example. So a couple of years ago, my grandpa died, we were really close and I was devastated. And people were saying things to me like, you'll get through it. You're tough, man up, you got this. And I didn't really like that they were saying that because I'm like, am I just supposed to not have any emotion that this man that I was so close with, he was like my best friend, just passed away? And I just feel like that's when I first started to notice that. It was like, wow, men can't really feel this way, especially coming from a household where it's just me and my mom, and my mom's very open and she loves to talk about vulnerability and speaking up. So I was kind of really surprised about that. And that's definitely a factor in why I started to talk with Zach.
Yeah, let's talk a bit about your grandpa. I never had the pleasure of meeting him. What was his name, by the way?
So, SEO, short for Selvin.
What a great name, Selvin. Yeah, I'm a fan of him. I'm a fan of grandpas. Both of my sons are literally named after my grandpa, Ben. So I really get the whole grandpa experience. And just to let you know, once a month, I meet my grandpa to this day in my dreams, and I still cry while I sleep. I still miss him. So the idea of man up and be strong, I wonder if we could be strong and grieve strongly. Like, what might that look like?
Yeah, I think, honestly, grieving strongly and being vulnerable is more of a strength than being closed off and stoic is. Despite what people say, like, oh, it's such a strength, like holding your feelings, I feel like that's honestly a weakness. Because I feel like being vulnerable is so stigmatized that when you do it, that is stronger than anything else because you're going against the culture. You're going against what other people might think. You're doing what's right. You're doing what's best for you. And I think there's nothing stronger than that.
Totally. And it's almost like saying, I know you have to go pee, but hold it for like a year. Be strong.
Yeah.
Rather than release it. I can't imagine what would happen to your kidneys and other organs if you did that. And yet we're told to do that with our feelings, not express it, not let it out.
And similarly, if you're going to hold our peeing for a year, literally explode, I'd assume. I don't know exactly what happened.
I'm going to go with there with you. I don't have medical proof of that. But
I don't know. If you're listening to this, don't try it. Don't try it. I don't recommend it. Similar to that, if you're holding in your feelings for a long amount of time, you are going to emotionally explode. You're going to emotionally burst. And that's going to be worse for you than anything else. Then the remedy for that is just speaking about it.
For sure. One of my favorite axioms is that we can talk it out or we can act it out. And it's better to talk it out than to act it out, because oftentimes when we act it out, people get physically hurt and relationships get ruined forever.
Oh, yes.
Over the weekend, and I'm not sure I'll want to bring this up, but two of my very favorite people in the world, Will Smith, of whom I'm a huge fan. I've read his book. I've reached out to all of his work. He's just one of my favorite people in the world. And he reminds me of myself, his enthusiasm and his love of wife and family, ostensibly ended up hitting Chris Rock. He acted it out. He didn't talk it out. Yeah. And I found myself wondering, like, how did you respond to that?
I think in that scenario, what should have happened was, it was obviously a terrible thing that Chris Rock had said. This is in context. Chris Rock didn't know that Jada had that condition. I still think it was a terrible joke, and I understand completely 100% why they were upset. The audience didn't like it. That's another thing to note. So it wasn't like they were cheering him on. They were upset with the joke. And Will Smith, funny enough, was laughing with the joke. Then he looks over, sees Jada. She's not happy. She's like, and he sees that and he goes up and, well, to quote Chris Rock, Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me. And I think that I understand sort of the intent, which is, oh, I wanted to protect my wife. I don't think that's an appropriate response. In front of all the people live watching, millions around the world watching, I think doing that is so horrible because it promotes, as soon as someone insults you, you just go up and physically respond. I think the appropriate response would have been, it's the Oscars, people make jokes. It was a joke in very poor taste, but you maybe stop him after and say, hey, I didn't appreciate that joke.
For sure.
That's what you do in public. I don't think you should have walked up and hit him.
I wonder how it would have gone. And I totally agree that the joke was a bad one. Alopecia is a terrible autoimmune condition, and it's very painful. to people who experience it, because our hair does matter to us. And if you don't believe me, just look at your inbox and your spam. You guys, I'm sure you've gotten a lot of things around hair restoration. So imagine what it's like for a female who's lost hers due to an autoimmune condition. So the joke was in poor taste. And I also under the impression that Chris did not know about that. And that's for them to decide. But what happened for us is children ended up seeing a very good man behave very badly. Yeah. And it's an act that no apology, even though apologies can, certainly reduce the harm over time, the act can't be taken back. So it's my hope, my biggest hope, that some positive growth will occur in the form of vulnerability on both parties.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of times people act out, especially like I'm seeing men just sort of act out physically and they think that just solves everything. But it just makes things worse, in my opinion. Using your fists, using your hands, it doesn't resolve anything. The only way to resolve something is with words.
And I'm guessing by words and other non-physical responses, you're also ruling out other ways of hurting people, like cyberbullying is another way of acting it out.
Oh yeah, of course.
Physical in the sense of punching somebody, but it can actually be maybe worse.
A Twitter war wouldn't be nice. Something like that, something where they're publicly shaming each other on social media. I think that's not an appropriate way in the slightest.
What would be your prescription, using your idea of we can't change what we don't talk about? How would that come about in lieu of, say, a Twitter war or cyberbullying? What would you endorse to other people who might act out badly?
I would say instead of making this a public issue, make it a private conversation that you have with the other person and work it out together. And when you're working it out, instead of making personal attacks, try really hard to find common ground and resolve the issue and move past it.
Agreed. I'm also beginning to think that a lot of people don't do it because they just don't know how. They were never schooled in conflict resolution. And there are two other options that I'm considering as you're speaking. One of them is inviting a third party, like a mediator who is able to take both sides, or at least able to be objective and neutral, and possibly offering a course, maybe even on Talk with Zach, on here's what to do instead of fighting.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like a mediator is definitely an option depending on the severity of the issue and the resolution.
Brilliant. So in some ways, this may be a bit of a reach, but I'm going to take a guess that in some ways, Talk with Zach is an homage in part to your grandpa and your love for him, and someone who provided you with a positive version of masculinity. I'm wondering, is there any truth in that hypothesis?
I feel like there definitely is, in the sense that a lot of the lessons I've learned from him have stuck with me. And what I've learned through his passing have definitely contributed to how I conduct myself and how I run Talk with Zach and what I promote on Talk with Zach.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm very moved by your relationship with him. And if you had a genie who showed up and said, I offer you a few wishes on where Talk with Zach goes over the next few years, what's your hope for the future of Talk with Zach?
My hope is just to reach as many teens as possible and become the place where teens go to have these open and vulnerable conversations. And I want to really change the culture as much as I can. I don't know how far my reach can be, but I want to make it as far as possible. If I've had international reach, I want to continue to do that, to reach teens everywhere and change what they think of speaking up. And I also want to show them that they're not alone. So many people think I'm the only one going through whatever. And I want to show them that they're not, that there are other people going through the same thing. They're just not talking about it. And I also just want to continue, of course, to build it out. I've been adding some new features. I want to expand to more platforms. I have some really exciting corporate partnerships going. One, which you may know of, with Mad Happy. I've talked a little bit with Nike about some branding and marketing. And then also I've been working with organizations like Challenge Success. And I really just want to open this up and just make it a very public space where teens can go and feel safe.
That's awesome. And I love the idea of you co-branding with apparel providers as well as sports outlets like Nike, especially in light of the fact that great athletes like Naomi Osaka are really representing mental health in, I think, a very touching manner. So I think that it's an organic combination. Yeah, you're nodding.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I just want to add really fast is I did an interview with a producer on Ted Lasso. And one thing that I find so interesting about that is it's a show about soccer players. And one of the most important parts of the show is mental health and talking about mental health and feelings and emotions. And there's even a therapist that is vital to the show. She plays such a large role and she really conducts a lot of what goes on in the locker room and the relationships the players have. And I think it's just so interesting because you never think that soccer players or a show about soccer would touch mental health at all. And it definitely has.
I couldn't agree more. Ted Lasso shows up more on this podcast than any other show. Wow. I think particularly because it's as close to a perfect show I've ever seen. They really talk about relationships as well as apologies and healing the world in a good way, so to speak, through these human relationships.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's just what we need to see more of in the media. We don't see these type of messages enough at all. And I think the more we see as mental health is positively portrayed, especially for men in the media, the more we'll also start to see change.
I'm thinking about the old rhyme, if it bleeds, it leads. And that's usually the way journalism works. And then what I also kind of hearing you say is that, and I haven't yet come up with a really catchy rhyme for the opposite of like, well, if it shines or if it shows human kindness, let's see more of those leading the way, because we know that people tend to kind of copy or mimic what they see. We become the average of the 5 people with whom we spend the most time. And I would think that the milieu in which we live really influences our behaviors and what we consider okay. And Ted Lasso and Talk with Zach are really doing their part.
I'm just doing it as much as I possibly can and just trying to influence just as many teens and people in my community as possible.
I'm so pumped that you're doing this, and I so wish you were around. We would have been buds in high school, for sure. Then I'm going to ask you the final fantastical question. So, if you can imagine for a second, you were bestowed with magical powers that could allow you to confer upon all humanity one skill or one insight that would have positive change. What would it be? And you could give this to all humans. What would it be? And how do you imagine it would affect people in groups as well as individuals?
There are so many things that I could choose right now. There are so many. I think the one that I want to give to all of humanity is open-mindedness. And the reason I want to choose this one is because the only way for us to really change and get past all the kinks and whatever we experience in society is to allow ourselves to imagine other perspectives and alternatives to the status quo. And I just feel that so many people are closed-minded and they just feel that what they think is the right way and the only way to proceed through life. And I just think that if more people were open to other ways and other just lifestyles, this would be such a different world. And this could really be applied to anything. It could be applied to for world leaders and how they run their countries, to even smaller things like what I'm doing, which is something like empathy. And then what I'm doing, which is trying to change the culture around mental health. And I feel like a main thing that's preventing me from doing it, that is people sort of thing that's ingrained in the culture, which is that it shouldn't really be talked about.
Well, Zach, you have taught me so much in this little time that we've shared together and through your writing as well. And I'm so glad that you are going to be a light to so many people of all ages who need to hear your message. And I just know deep in my heart that on some level, your grandpa is with you as you go out courageously helping people in this way. What a brilliant way to use the stressor of COVID, the sadness and the grief around your grandpa, you've repurposed it and channeled it into such a beautiful tool to help people. I think that alone is a big part of the story, but there are so many other facets for which I'm just beyond grateful, man.
Yeah, thanks so much. I really enjoyed having this conversation with you. I think we covered some really important topics, and it was just great talking with you.
Ditto, dude. And I hope to stay in touch.
Yeah, for sure.
And can't wait to see what happens next in your world.
Yeah.
All right, bro. This is Dr. Adam Dorsey thanking you for listening to Super Psyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe.